Welcome to The Point. I'm your host, Ana Kasparian, and we have a hell of a show for you today. My favorite story, probably of the year, stoner sloths. What is it? Why is it going viral? I promise you, you will enjoy that story. And I have an awesome panel on here to discuss the story with me. I have Alhassen. You guys know her. Come on. She's been on the show so many times before. She's awesome. And also Sandra Daugherty. Alhassen is the guest host of the stream on Al Jazeera English. And Sandra is the host of Sex Nerd Sandra. It's a podcast that you guys should all check out.
Yeah.
Hey. Are you guys excited?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I am. I love the stories today. Unfortunately, we're going to start off with a pretty upsetting, depressing story involving a public figure in sexual assault or domestic assault. A 26-year-old by the name of Danielle Brand live streamed her alleged assault by Anothony Cumia. Now, Anothony Cumia was of Opie and Anthony fame until he got fired for tweeting some questionable things back in 2014. However, he's been in a relationship with this 26-year-old, and apparently they got into some sort of altercation that led Danielle to post the following video. Now, again, she live streamed this. This is not the video in its entirety. I highly recommend you watch the whole video. It's strange, it's awkward, and here's what she had to say.
Right now.
Don't.
Hi, I'm in Long Island. I got my hand broken. I'm waiting for the police to come,
Where's
but oh my God, don't hit me again.
I'm kidding you.
Stay away from me. I tried to call the police.
Got enough.
He turned the phone off.
It wasn't Periscope, by the way.
You shouldn't have lied then. You shouldn't have lied, and you shouldn't have hit me, and you shouldn't have treated me like shit, and then I wouldn't be Periscoping this right now.
Okay, so I want to be absolutely clear about something. There are no accusations of sexual assault at this point, but I do want to note that there are allegations of physical assault, okay? So she's alleging that they got into an argument. I don't know what the argument is about. There are very few details about that. And then he started to hit her. She claims that he strangled her, and then she called the cops, and as she was waiting for the cops, she did that live stream of the whole incident. Now, Cumia was arrested. He's been charged with strangulation and domestic violence, and apparently he has already been out of jail. No bond was set, so he will have his day in court in January. We'll see how it all plays out. But the entire video, I think, is really strange, especially considering the fact that if someone has just physically assaulted you, get out of that situation. Don't stay in that environment where there's someone who broke your hand, who tried to strangle you, who's really posing an imminent threat. I think if you stay there, not only does he continue to serve as a threat, but people are going to look at that story and they're going to question whether or not he really did serve as a threat. I'm not questioning that. I mean, you have the evidence. You can see pictures of her bruised up. We don't know the full story because we don't have his point of view yet. But what do you ladies think about this? Maitha, make your point.
Yeah, I'll echo your point that the footage was very bizarre because the transition is one of the altercation to Cumia making jokes about this being the, whatever the names are, show, and then telling her to watch out, not to trip over the ottoman. It's disheartening to me too, because who does she have to call? Mm-hmm. Is there a family member she could have called? She just ran out of the house? Did she just want to put him on blast? A lot of things are really strange about this story and left unanswered. Actually, more fascinating was reading the comments in this story, because a lot of people could relate and resonated with the tone that he took with her.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, domestic violence is a very complicated situation because you can't really know how you're going to react if you find yourself in that situation, right? But the best advice I can give to anyone, man or woman, who finds themselves in any type of physical altercation is find a way to get yourself out of there immediately. Don't go on social media, don't live stream it, unless that's really the only way that you can get the word out about what's happening to you and you feel like you're trapped in the house. Maybe she was trapped. I don't know. I don't know what kind of situation she was in. Sandra, what do you think? Make your point.
I feel lots of feelings with this one. No matter how drunk or high someone is, I feel like, because I think that some people would look at that and go, oh, well, she was asking for that kind of stuff, because like, oh, you clearly are partying or whatever. And like, that's not the case. That person doesn't deserve getting smacked or strangled. Yeah. Also, domestic violence and sexual violence are so common. It's actually 1 in 3 women will be the victim of domestic or sexual violence. I have already experienced that. There are 3 people on this panel, you know, I mean, it's so common, and so I totally get why people in the comments were like, "Oh yeah, totally." People can turn so fast. I'm not saying all men are evil. That is no, 0%. And also, everyone can be abusive, and it's kind of that thing that Louis C.K. he jokes is like the biggest threat to men generally is heart disease. The biggest threat to women is men. Like you're gonna be very. Yes, she should get out of there. At the same time, we're talking about it because she periscoped it, and I think that's important.
That's a good point.
And I've been in situations where I felt like, hey, I'm a strong woman. I should stand my ground, and this is my equal, and I'm gonna meet this head on. When in actuality, in 10 minutes, I'm gonna die. But I may not know that because I think I'm just gonna like talk it out, you know? And so it's hard to say what's right because we're taught to be one way, but then in reality, when someone's watching you on TV, they're like, run, you idiot, you know?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I just want to reiterate, when you find yourself in a situation like that, you really don't know how you're going to react. You know, every situation is different, and I love the point that you touched on, Sandra, about how everyone has the ability to be abusive in one way or another, whether it's verbally abusive, sexually abusive, or just physically abusive. And the stats are very high when it comes to domestic abuse. It's really disheartening. So it is important for stories like this to make headlines and to have an open dialogue about it. Now, the personal question for this story is, what's the worst photo or status you've ever put up on social media? Maytha, I'll start with you.
Well, you know, because you liked this one a couple days ago, I put a status saying I was very frustrated with my university and their lack of support. I'm currently doing a PhD program. And so I admitted something really vulnerable that I've been going through, which is every single day I question whether or not I should be in this program. So one day I drafted 3 different kinds of letters asking about what the dropout resignation process was. And I put it up on Facebook. And actually, I was really afraid to do it. It turned out to be something that was really inspiring for me. Female scholars from all over the world that I admired wrote back and said, "We're here, we're behind you."
Yeah, I saw that.
Vent, call me, let me know what you're going through. And then what was more interesting was people shared the variety of ways that they finished their degree. And I felt really, again, kind of closed in my own world of feeling trapped in this degree, and found different ways, or that, you know, this process is difficult, but there's a community of support, even if my university, USC, by the way, University of Southern California, which forces their students to pay like $60,000 a year per tuition, and they underpay us as TAs significantly. So there they are, their shame, they're on blast. So I was really relieved.
So in the end, it actually kind of worked out for you. That's good. Yeah, I mean, I did see it and I did like it, because as someone who also works in education, it does get very frustrating to see how undervalued educators are and how entitled students can be, because that's another issue that I've come across. So what about you, Sandra? What's the worst thing you've posted on social media?
So there was this little hashtag called Black Lives Matter. And I'm not always on social media, and I often unplug and kind of go into my own little world. And I was thinking about sexuality and the importance and how we push our relationships and our love stuff off to one side, and then everything else is over here. And I was like, you know, sex lives matter. That's a great hashtag, and I do it. Sex lives matter, and like a few of my listeners were like, "You probably shouldn't," because apparently that was when all the Baltimore marches were happening.
Yeah, people might think you're minimizing the Black Lives Matter.
I didn't know that it had bubbled up again, and like I just wasn't thinking, and so I was like, delete on that one.
Did anyone come after you over that? Like, did it cause any controversy?
There are a few people being like, "That's really insensitive." I'm like, but you know, I'm not gonna fight. I'm gonna think. I thought about it and went, "Oh, you're right."
Yes. I love that you share that story, because it shows you that, you know, whenever there are these big controversial Twitter stories where one person posts something and then a big group of people attack that other person, you have to keep in mind, like, understand the intentions and the perspective of the person that's being questioned, because oftentimes there wasn't any ill intent. It wasn't meant to be insensitive. It was just a lapse in judgment, and we all have that. I've had so many lapses in judgment, whether it's doing the show or posting something on social media. But I would say the worst thing that I've posted on social media was responses to trolls, right? Like, it's the worst thing you can do, because you're not gonna convince them differently from what they already believe, they're not going to like you. They're obviously trying to get that attention. They're trying to get under your skin, but sometimes you can't help it. You just want to be like, no, you don't know me. You don't know who I am as a person, right? You want to defend yourself. Don't do it. It's a waste of time because they don't care who you are as a person. They just want to get under your skin, and you just gave them exactly what they wanted.
Forgot about the trolls category. That opens up a whole new
it really does,
window to answering this question.
So frustrating. But we do want to hear from you guys. What's the worst thing you've ever posted on social media? Comment in the section below. Let us know what it is, and we'll see you soon. My absolute favorite story of the week has to do with an anti-drug campaign that was launched by the Australian government. Now, they're trying to convince young people that it's a bad idea to smoke marijuana. But a bad strategy in doing that is incorporating something that's going to become a viral hit. And that's exactly what happened with Stoner Sloth. Don't believe me? Take a look.
Okay, time's up. Pens down. Delilah. Pens down, Delilah.
Stoner Sloth.
Jason, could you pass the salt, please, darling? Jason, the salt.
Stoner Sloth.
All right, so those are just 2 examples of these awesome ads. And again, they were aimed at convincing kids to not smoke weed, but the exact opposite has happened. Well, I don't know if the opposite has happened. I'm sure kids who were prone to smoking weed were going to do it anyway. But now people are creating like merchandise like designed after the Stoner Sloth. The videos are going viral because people find it funny. They're not taking the message seriously because the message itself, I think, is flawed, right? So first of all, I love like the music that goes on like as soon as the sloth comes into play, right? It's like doom, 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 ah, right? It's just not effective. And here's the thing, if you're a governmental official who wants to educate young people about the harmful effects of marijuana, I get it. It's not a completely harmless drug. Although I smoke it and I don't think it's that big of a deal, I don't think it's a good idea for teenagers to smoke it, right? Your brain's still developing and there still needs to be some studies done to figure out what kind of adverse effects it could have on young people. But you gotta be honest with them. You can't like fearmonger and make it seem as though marijuana makes you so incapacitated that you can't function, that you're gonna confuse, I should say, salt with salad when someone's asking you to pass the salt at a dinner table. Like, just educate yourself before you try to educate others about marijuana. That's all I really want to say about this. Sandra, what do you think? Make your point.
So weird. I feel like this was not, well, this is great. I wish that more people who want to make viral videos for entertainment would take after the Australian government. But I feel that this is a really silly time to be criminalizing marijuana when there are so many bigger fish to fry. Yeah. Really, marijuana, it's equivalent and less dangerous than alcohol in a lot of ways. So unless they're having some situation in Australia I'm not aware of, why are you spending your money and attention on this? Not important. Although I do totally get about the brain development thing, that is important. Also, this reminds me of AHF, which is an organization that's really sex negative and attacks, is like really fearmongers around STIs here in the US, and are the people behind like forcing porn stars to use condoms, which you think is like a great idea, but actually when you look at the statistics and the science and stuff, they're just doing the exact same thing with sex and condoms and porn as marijuana and drug use in teenagers in Australia. So it's interesting to see that.
That's really interesting. I feel like we can do an entire show on like the fear mongering that happens with sex. And there is a lot of that, of course, in the U.S. and a lot of other like conservative countries. Maytha, what do you think about this? Make your point.
You were not overhyping this story at all. It is the best of the week, the month. you had to be stoned to come up with the stoner sloth character.
Yes.
I don't know how. And it was really funny because the Australian MP of New South Wales, which I believe this is where the video came from, he even made fun of it, not knowing that some people on his elected official team made these videos and asked if stoner sloth was related to Chewbacca. Listen, I mean, I agree with you. I think that the best strategy is to be honest with kids, have open conversation. Again, do we have to go to fear mongering to convince our children to actually take their health into their own consideration with the daily choices that they make? I believe that's what good parenting is. Help your children make those decisions so when they're confronted and they wonder whether or not, okay, should I try this? How much should I try? Should I have conversations with my parents about this? That they're equipped for those moments. Yep. But the best part of this, too, were the mock videos. I really wish y'all need to watch the mock videos because they did one with the passing the salt that was an ad for an anti-sodium salt campaign.
That's so funny.
It was excellent.
Yes, and yeah, anti-salt sodium campaigns. I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways, especially in America, that makes more sense than an anti-marijuana campaign.
Sugar too.
Sugar especially. So that's a great point. All right, so here's the personal question for the story. Tell us about a time you tried to hide being either drunk or high from friends and family. Sandra.
Oh yeah, come to me first. Yeah. So as you may know, I go to Burning Man every once in a while, which is a festival in the desert where people camp and have a good time.
And don't hide taking drugs though.
Oh, there's plenty of hiding and taking drugs. I mean, lots of people don't take drugs. I just tend to party fairly sober in my life. But on one particular day, it was sunny and beautiful, I took, a friend gave me a little bit of acid, and I have very little experience on acid. And so I took that just thinking that I'd have like a nice journey and just kind of experience this. And then the biggest windstorm with tons of dust came in, and my camp, which like is dust free inside, like the tent started to come apart. Oh, wow. And so we all had to run in and like fix it during like what felt like a scene from The Wizard of Oz where like just there's so much wind. And I am just like, it's hitting me. And I'm like, keep it together, Sandra. And so I'm like, and they're like naked people running around. Like it's just, there's a lot, like it already is an acid trip without the acid, and then I'm like high out of my mind. Anyway, no one could tell I was high. The end.
That's amazing. That's amazing because I feel like I have a really hard time hiding it. But I have a doozy of a story that has to do with psychedelics.
So I've partaken in pot, and I'm always usually fine. We've had conversations about this on the show. The one thing I noticed that I'm having an oversensitive reaction to lately are edibles.
Yes.
But
agreed.
But I took it to the next extreme, not knowing I was taking it to the next extreme. I was on a cruise ship from Miami to the Bahamas, and then on the way back. And my friend the whole weekend was just trumping up this pot tea that she had. And she was like, we're all gonna take it, don't worry, like we'll get tea bags and we'll share some of it because I don't have enough to go around. I was like, fine. So she seeped my teacup first, which means it had the most concentration, and then she was seeping everybody else's. And so again, it's not registering. The week before, I had a bad edible trip. I'm not making the connection that this is not just an edible, but this is like an edible on acid. That I'm taking. Pure. It's the most concentrated that you could get. So I think nothing of it. I drink all of it. And actually, the Whalers were playing outside, and it was great, and I was enjoying the Whalers. And then all of a sudden, I feel my movements just slowing down. Oh, no. And then I go into a room, an auditorium, and then I just feel really hypersensitive and overwhelmed. Then I go into my room, and that's where the mass paranoia, the paralyzation happens. But I feel so suffocated in this room, I need to get out. But it got so bad that I had to convince myself not to go to the top of the deck because I was so sensitive to people's energies. I was afraid I was gonna jump off the boat.
Oh my God.
It was the worst. I thought my brain was gonna be severely damaged. As I was telling you beforehand, I had like complete sympathy with people who are suffering from mental illness because I could see how you are trapped in your mind and how overwhelming it becomes and how easily stimulated you can be by people and how there's very little recourse for people who don't understand what you're going through to sympathize. It was never...
Stoner sloth, everyone.
Wow, you know, now you're making me think that those governmental officials in Australia did do their research.
Just the edibles. That's all.
No, I've had edibles before where I felt like I could not control my body. Like I did feel paralyzed. Like I didn't want to move from like the bed or wherever I was. And also the paranoia, I think, is the worst thing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's interesting that a lot of these like anti-drug ads, anti-marijuana ads to be specific, don't focus on the paranoia aspect of it, because that does exist for a lot of people. Okay, so for me, I had a psychedelic trip that made me nervous, and I was trying to hide it from people. I was supposed to go to like a rock concert at Griffith Park, at the Greek Theater at the Griffith Park. And so me and my boyfriend parked the car like pretty far away from Greek Theater because there was so much traffic getting in. But before we did, we decided to eat some mushrooms, right? And I had mushroom tea before, and it was such a mild, enjoyable, euphoric experience that I thought it was going to be like a piece of cake. But it was the first time that I ate it, and we both shared an eighth. And then all of a sudden we start walking up. And for those of you unfamiliar with Griffith Park and the Greek Theater, you have to walk up a pretty steep pathway in order to get there. Before I know it, and keep in mind, it's like a pretty cool night, I'm like sweating like crazy. And so is he. We're like, our body temperature is going up. Like I feel like my heart rate is really going. And I'm like, oh my God, it's hitting me, and it's hitting me really hard. And then finally I realized we have to pick up our tickets from will call, which means we have to communicate with people, and I'm in no position to communicate. It was funny because he wouldn't stop talking, but I was just like quiet, like absorbing everything that was happening. So then we get to will call, and I was like, Anna, keep it together, just like Sandra, right? And the lady was like, okay, I'm gonna need your confirmation number. I don't have my confirmation number. I have to look through my phone.
I don't know what my last name is.
Yeah. And I was like, and this is what Christian did. He was like, oh my God. he just turned his back, and I had to like figure it out. Finally, we get the tickets. We walk into the venue, we sit down, and it's like the worst situation because you're surrounded by people, and when you're on mushrooms, you don't want to be surrounded by anyone. So like 2 minutes into the concert, we left. He's like, you want to go? I was like, so we left, we went to Griffith Park, we laid out, stared up at the stars, and then I randomly started crying for no reason. So that was my last psychedelic trip, and it was interesting. And actually the crying part, maybe one day I'll talk about it in detail on the show. It was one of the best things that could have happened to me at that point because there were all of these suppressed emotions that I wasn't coping with, and it really kind of brought it to the surface, and all of a sudden I was just like dealing with it. And I felt like a detox, like an emotional detox afterwards. So that was my experience. Comment in the section below. Tell us what you think about the story, whether or not you've ever had to hide the fact that you were high or drunk among family members and friends. We do love reading your stories, so comment below, and we'll see you soon. Students at Oberlin College are very much concerned with what one of the cafes is serving its students. Now, there's lots of talk about cultural appropriation, but I'm unclear as to whether or not this story falls under that category, so we'll have a discussion about it. Now, the students at this school are concerned because there are all sorts of ethnic foods being served as authentic when in reality they're not authentic at all. There's sushi that's being served that's not very sushi-esque. There is Vietnamese food being served that is not actual authentic Vietnamese food. And so students who are from those cultures are worried about these foods misrepresenting what their actual cuisine is all about. One of those students is Tomoyo Joshi. He's a junior at Oberlin College, and here's what he has to say. When you're cooking a country's dish for other people, including ones who have never tried the original dish before, you're also representing the meaning of the dish as well as its culture. So if people not from that heritage take food, modify it, and serve it as authentic, it's appropriative. The undercooked rice and lack of fresh fish is disrespectful. Now, this is specifically about Bon Appetit, which is one place on campus where people get food. And apparently, this cafe is doing its best to kind of try to, represent different ethnicities and different cultures, but apparently they're failing and they're upsetting the students. Now, it's interesting that the students are complaining about this particular cafe because I think this cafe is representative of the United States of America, where all foods that are supposed to be authentic, that are passed off as authentic, aren't really authentic at all. I mean, take pizza, for instance. Pizza, which is originally from Italy, is nothing like what it was originally meant to be, right? Like, Domino's is not pizza. It's a U.S. interpretation of an Italian food. But is that appropriative? Is that being disrespectful? I'm curious what you guys think about this. Let me start with you, Maytha. Make your point.
One, is it culturally appropriative? I would say no. Two, is it offensive? Yes, absolutely. For the first point, like you said, it's everywhere. I mean, all these foods, sushi is everywhere. I've had bad sushi in so many places. I don't know what authentic sushi tastes like. I've never been to Japan. But I will say, from my own cultural experience, hummus. I have never tried a hummus in the US, and I know this is gonna sound very patronizing and arrogant, but I really have never tried a hummus that tastes close to authentic in the US. I reserve, I wait till I go outside of the country to the Middle East to eat it, or I make it myself, because what tends to happen, and I think in most of these cases, is that market economics comes in and people skimp on some of the key ingredients that are probably more readily available in those countries. So for example, you brought up the issue of pizza in Italy. Mozzarella, they always use fresh buffalo mozzarella. You're not gonna find that in a Domino's pizza. Why? You paid like $10 for two full pizzas.
That shit's good though. I'm keeping it real, right? I love Domino's.
Yeah, but I think the language of cultural appropriation is very heavy-handed and makes people dismissive of your claim.
Yes.
And so, of course, on-campus dining is gonna be horrible, but I do think that they could, you know, Yelp shame that campus dinery. And I'm just also personally offended when there's bad food that's trying to represent a certain country.
Yeah, I get the perspective of the students because you don't want your culture to be misrepresented by terrible food, right? But at the same time, I think that the vast majority of people in the US have an understanding that the food that's being passed off as authentic is not really authentic. So if I'm gonna go to a Mexican restaurant in, I don't know, Northern California or Illinois, I don't know, whatever, random places, I'm not gonna think right off the bat, this is gonna be authentic Mexican food. You have to be a little more skeptical of it. But I get it, like, you don't want your country or your culture or your ethnicity, any of that, your values to be misrepresented. And I think that's what these students are trying to get at. I don't think it's cultural appropriation. And I agree with you that it kind of minimizes actual cases of cultural appropriation when you point to things like this. But Sandra, what do you think? Make your point.
Oh, okay. So I think three things. One, I totally get feeling embarrassed. I mean, this is Ohio. I mean, this is the Midwest. I mean, it's fascinating to me because, yeah, the Vietnamese student, I'm sure, like, if I were in another country and my food was being passed up and nobody knew about my culture, I'd be so embarrassed.
Yes.
Just like, oh my God. So one, I get it. If there's an issue on campus of international students not really getting a chance to be understood for their culture, and if there's some on-campus tension there, that should be addressed.
Yes.
In terms of the language, yeah, don't call it authentic or traditional. Like, don't lie to people, or, you know, like, that's tacky. That's just tacky, right?
I agree with you. And I think that, honestly, what these students want more than anything is good food. I mean, a lot of them are kind of forced into eating this food, especially if they're living on campus and they're, you know, part of the meal program on campus. So they want something better. But I get the cultural issues with it, and I get the quality issues with it. And at the same time, everyone needs to calm down. 10-2, as Cenk would say.
In terms of the appropriation thing, one thing that I think is important to remember when you're analyzing things for appropriation is what is a culture like mocked or made fun of for, and then when you as a dominant culture take it on, you're honored for. Like when white women wear cornrows and you're so edgy, but if a black person wears it, you're like, oh, you need to take care of your hair better. You know, that kind of thing.
Or we won't hire you either.
Right, exactly. And then you lose out on employment. That kind of stuff. That effed.
And that happens all the time. And I think that's a criticism of the current system that we're living in and we're dealing with, and that system should be criticized. I think oftentimes when cultural appropriation comes up, the person who's wearing the cornrows is demonized, when I don't think that's necessarily the best strategy in dealing with it, because then you're turning someone off to a legitimate problem because they feel like they're being targeted unnecessarily, right? The system is the problem. When employers refuse black women a job because they're wearing their hair naturally, it's the employer's fault. It's not some random white girl's fault because she likes to wear her hair in cornrows. At least that's the way I think about it.
Are Japanese students being made fun of for sushi? I have no experience. I don't know.
Everyone loves sushi. Who doesn't love sushi other than vegans and vegetarians? But come on. It's delicious. All right, so here's the question. What's your favorite food native to your heritage, Maytha?
So I'm very, very biased. I think Syria, especially the city that my father's from, Aleppo, has the best food in the world. And thankfully, because of your people, the Armenians brought over their cuisine, and there's incredible fusion there. So one of the dishes is called muhammara, which is, do you know it?
I think so. Describe it.
So it is a crushed red pepper with pomegranate syrup.
Yes.
And crushed walnut
Yes.
dip. Oh my
So
God.
good.
I want to appropriate
like-
that so
It's
hard.
so good.
Yeah. Because what
I
they
want to
have-
appropriate that
that's
so hard. It's my
hard.
favorite phrase in this entire show.
Or you can eat it. You can also eat it. You can also eat it. It's available at Carousel. They do a pretty good job at it.
Carousel.
Yeah,
Random
Carousel.
plugs in this video. Domino's, Carousel. If you're in LA, Carousel has some of the best Middle Eastern Armenian food imaginable.
Yes, totally. Oh, so good.
So good. What about you, Sandra?
Chicken adobo. So the Filipinos have some questionable dishes. I'm first to say it. However, the chicken adobo, that's a party favorite no matter where. It's vinegar and bay leaves and pepper and some oils and garlic. And you just simmer chicken in it for a long time, and it takes on this tangy, delicious, and soy sauce, very important. This tangy flavor that you just want to like bathe in it. You want to appropriate that everywhere.
Oh my God, that sounds so good. I'm so hungry right now. Armenians have actually appropriated a lot of dishes from around the region that the country's in, right? So a lot of Armenian cuisine is influenced by Syrian cuisine, by Turkish cuisine. But I would say that my favorite Armenian dish is actually a soup called sipas. And it's like a yogurt soup. Hold on, I know it sounds kind of weird. With rice and crushed dried mint leaves.
Oh.
It's so good.
We make that too. I
Really?
forget. Yeah.
It's so good. I'm like obsessed with that soup.
So yummy.
My mom makes it during the wintertime, obviously, because it's a soup. And yesterday, she texted me while I was at work, and she's like, I made sipas, you should come over. And she lives kind of far, so usually during the week I don't do that, but I was really tempted, you know, just to eat that soup. Anyway, guys, comment in the section below and tell us what type of food native to your culture are you a big fan of? Describe it, make us hungry. We're hungry people. And also, tell us what you think about Oberlin College. Do you think that these students are justifiably airing their grievances, or do you think that this is a questionable criticism of Bon Appetit Cafe? Comment in the section below. We'll see you soon. And remember, never be afraid to make your point. All right, guys, thank you for watching. I want to give our awesome panelists an opportunity to tell you where you can find their work. Maytha Alhassen.
Hey guys, you can find me at MAYALHASSEN. That's both for Instagram and Twitter, and my website is www.mayalhassen.com, or you could just go to Google and search Maytha, M-A-Y-T-H-A, because there are not that many Maythas in the United States.
That's awesome.
There you
Very
go.
unique name. Sandra.
Hello. Hi, I have a podcast called Sex Nerd Sandra. You'll find it on all the places you find podcasts. And I teach workshops online and around the country. So you can check out sexnerdsandra.com and all the social media places. And I'm usually around there. So yeah.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for doing the show. I'm Ana Kasparian. You can check me out Monday through Friday on The Young Turks, youtube.com/The Young Turks, and on Twitter at Ana Kasparian and Instagram, Ana Kasparian TYT. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Remember to comment in the section below and tell us your stories, because we do love reading from you. We do love interacting with you. And remember, never be afraid to make your point. Hey guys, I have an awesome new announcement for you. Turns out that The Point will be hosted on the video platform Watchable.com. All you have to do is go to Watchable.com and search for The Point, and boom, you'll see our videos, you'll see our content, and we really want to make sure that The Point is available on all these different and awesome, great platforms. So take a look, tell us what you think, and we'll see you soon. Welcome to The Point. I'm your host, Ana Kasparian, and we have a hell of a show for you today. My favorite story, probably of the year, stoner sloths. What is it? Why is it going viral? I promise you, you will enjoy that story. And I have an awesome panel on here to discuss the story with me. I have Alhassen. You guys know her. Come on. She's been on the show so many times before. She's awesome. And also Sandra Daugherty. Alhassen is the guest host of the stream on Al Jazeera English. And Sandra is the host of Sex Nerd Sandra. It's a podcast that you guys should all check out.
Yeah.
Are you guys excited?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I am. I love the stories today. Unfortunately, we're going to start off with a pretty upsetting, depressing story involving a public figure and sexual assault or domestic assault. A 26-year-old by the name of Danielle Brand live streamed her alleged assault by Anothony Cumia. Now, Anothony Cumia was I want to be absolutely clear about something. There are no accusations of sexual assault at this point, but I do want to note that there are allegations of physical assault. Okay, so she's alleging that they got into an argument. I don't know what the argument is about. There are very few details about that. And then he started to hit her. She claims that he strangled her, and then she called the cops, and as she was waiting for the cops, she did that live stream of the whole incident. Now, Cumia was arrested. He's been charged with strangulation and domestic violence, and apparently he has already been out of jail. No bond was set, so he will have his day in court in January. We'll see how it all plays out. But the entire video, I think, is really strange, especially considering the fact that if someone has just physically assaulted you, get out of that situation. Don't stay in that environment where there's someone who broke your hand, who tried to strangle you, who's really posing an imminent threat. I think it would be an Anothony fame until he got fired for tweeting some questionable things back in 2014. However, he's been in a relationship with this 26-year-old, and apparently they got into some sort of altercation that led Danielle to post the following video. Now, again, she live streamed this. This is not the video in its entirety. I highly recommend you watch the whole video. It's strange, it's awkward, and here's what she had to say.
Right now.
Don't.
Hi, I'm in Long Island. I got my hand broken. I'm waiting for the police to come,
Where's
but
your...
oh my God, don't hit me again.
I'm kidding you.
Stay away from me. I tried to call the police.
Got enough.
He turned the phone off.
It wasn't Periscope, by the way.
You shouldn't have lied then. Shouldn't have lied, and shouldn't have hit me, and you shouldn't have treated me like shit. And then I wouldn't be periscoping this right now.
Okay, so if you stay there, not only does he continue to serve as a threat, but people are going to look at that story and they're going to question whether or not he really did serve as a threat. I'm not questioning that. I mean, you have the evidence. You can see pictures of her bruised up. We don't know the full story because we don't have his point of view yet. But what do you ladies think about this? Maitha, make your point.
Yeah, I'll echo your point that the footage was very bizarre because the transition is one of the altercation to Cumia making light, making jokes about this being the, whatever the names are, show, and then telling her to watch out, not to trip over the ottoman. It's disheartening to me too because who does she have to call? Mm-hmm. Is there a family member she could have called? She just ran out of the house? Did she just want to put him on blast? A lot of things are really strange about this story and left unanswered. Actually, more fascinating was reading the comments in this story because a lot of people could relate and resonated with the tone that he took with her.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, domestic violence is a very complicated situation because you can't really know how you're going to react if you find yourself in that situation, right? But the best advice I can give to anyone, man or woman, who finds themselves in any type of physical altercation is find a way to get yourself out of there immediately. Don't go on social media. Don't live stream it unless that's really the only way that you can get the word out about what's happening to you and you feel like you're trapped in the house. Maybe she was trapped. I don't know. I don't know what kind of situation she was in. Sandra, what do you think? Make your point.
I feel lots of feelings with this one. No matter how drunk or high someone is, I feel like, because I think that some people would look at that and go, oh, well, she was asking for that kind of stuff because like, oh, you clearly are partying or whatever. And like, that's not the case.